Chiori is underwhelming. Now don't get me wrong, her design is really good, so if you want to pull her for that, then please go ahead. The issue however is with her kit and her constellations. For those who don't know, Chiori is the newest Geo character in Genshin Impact whose banner timings are really unfortunate because she is just before arlecchino and in the most filler patch throughout the entire Genshin history. So why do I say that she is underwhelming? Well, to answer that, we have to understand her kit first. Starting off with a basic attack, which is just that, a basic attack and nothing more. Her skill however summons a doll after Chiori does a slash attack, and this doll continuously attacks enemies every 3.6 seconds for a total of 5 times. The interesting part about her skill is that after the doll is summoned, you can do two things. Either press the skill button again to switch to the next character, or start normal attacking with Chiori to gain Geo infusion for 5 seconds. Another interesting thing about her skill is that if there is a Geo construct already on the battlefield, then 2 dolls will be summoned instead of 1. But keep in mind, this doesn't mean double damage. No, because this will result in a total of 8 doll attacks instead of just 5. So that's a 60% damage increase and not exactly double. But at the same time, when you are near the Geo construct, you will also gain 20% Geo damage bonus. Moving on to her ultimate, which is just an AoE slash attack and nothing more, honestly. With that being said, I would recommend leveling up her skill first and foremost, followed by her burst, and finally her normals, which aren't that useful unless you are at C6. Now let's discuss artifacts, and the interesting thing here is that there is a close competition between the 2 best artifact sets for her. Husk of Opulent Dreams and Golden Troop are very close, and both can be marginally better than each other depending on how you are playing her. However, the bottom line is crit stats. So I would recommend choosing the set which has better crit overall and of course which has more defense. Archaic Petra is another decent option if you plan on running her as an off-field DPS with another element unit, but Husk and Golden Troop are just much better. You can also run a combination of 2-piece artifact sets like 2-piece Golden Troop and 2-piece Archaic Petra, or 2-piece Golden Troop and 2-piece Husk, or even 2-piece attack percent artifacts, but those are literally bottom of the barrel. As for the stats, I would recommend running Defense Sands, Geo damage bonus goblet, and crit rate or damage circlet depending on your crit values, with a focus on crit and defense in the substat. Attack substats work too, but are generally worse than defense substats. One important point to note is that there are scenarios where defense goblet can be considered, but those are with her signature weapon, and let's be honest, no one is getting that. I would also suggest getting her to at least 120 ER, because I feel that's a sweet spot for many units in general. And if you are enjoying this video so far, then a sub to the channel would be gorgeous. Moving on to her weapons, and to no one's surprise, her signature is obviously the best in slot, followed by any 5-star crit weapon like Primordial or Mistsplitter or Splendor, etc. However, for her free-to-play best in slot, I would say Harbinger of Dawn over Cinnabar Spindle or Festering Desire just because of the availability. But if you are a veteran player and have either of those event weapons, then go with them. Other effective choices include Favonius, Sacrificial, Wolffang, and Finale of the Deep. The full list of her weapon choices is displayed on screen. Now let's discuss teams, and I'll be honest, she doesn't have many viable options because she is limited by the fact that she is a Geo unit and not Zhongli at that. Her best team is Mono Geo, as it works perfectly with her kit, and not to mention, you will always have a Geo construct on field to get that second doll damage. So a team like Goro, Ito, Chiori and Dongli works perfectly for her. You can replace Dongli with Albedo or even Goro with Albedo if you want. So basically, you can mix and match Geo units to make a perfect team for her. Now that is literally the only team I would suggest running for her at C0, because I'll be honest, she isn't that good with Navia unless you are at C1. You can also make some cope teams, but those will obviously result in a lot less damage. Now I want you to listen to what I'm about to say very carefully, because this is very crucial to making full use of her kit. So generally, when building a team with Chiori, you should ideally have your DPS in the slot next to her. And why is that a requirement? Well, when when you use Chiori's skill, you have the option to either get an infused Geo Sword with her, or you can switch to the next unit in team and deal slight extra damage. So why not do the latter and get that extra chip damage, right? And to do that, all you need to do is press the skill button again after she is done doing her skill animation, and after the switch, a maximum of 2 attacks can be done by that switched character, which will result in a coordinated attack. And of course, this damage is not insane or anything, and that's why I'm calling it chip damage. And moving on to the Constellations, and right off the bat, I would say that if you're pulling for her, then I would suggest going for C1, because that unlocks her ability to work with Geo units which don't make Geo constructs like Navia. C2 and C4 are kinda meh, and C6 makes her an insane DPS. So with that explanation out of the way, what are the reasons she could be considered underwhelming? Well, let's start with the false advertising Hoyo did during the live stream. And I'm using the false advertising term as a joke here, by the way. So this bit where they showed Chiori and Navia together is straight up wrong, because let me tell you, those two don't work together unless you get her to her first constellation. And therein lies a major issue. At C0, she doesn't work with Navia because Chiori requires another Geo unit in team which can make a Geo construct. Now, if you do that and keep only one element applying unit in the team, it's gonna be tough to get all of Navia's skill stacks because the crystallized shields would generate a lot less. And if you don't put a Geo construct unit in team, then you are missing out on 60% extra damage with Chiori. Another minor issue, which is a personal preference one, is that I don't really like playing Mono Geo, and her best team at C0 is literally Goro, Ito, Chiori and Zhongli. Another issue, and this may be a controversial one, is that it will take some time to fully adjust to her kit. Now, what am I talking about here? Well, I'm talking about her skill and how the double tap to switch thing will take time to adjust. Because I'll be honest, half of the time I was directly switching to my DPS instead of using the double tap thing. And the interesting thing is that the double tap switch has an internal cooldown, which really messes up how I play, because generally I would like to double tap the skill button, summon her dolls and follow it up with an immediate switch. But that won't be the case due to the cooldown. Instead, I have to press the skill again after her skill animation is done, which is very annoying. As for the other skill effect where she gets Geo infusion after using her skill, well, that can be overridden by Benny's C6 or Chongyun's skill. But to be honest, no one is using that anyway unless at C6. And like I said before, I find Mono Geo to be kinda boring, but at C6, she becomes a full-fledged DPS, which can go on par with units like Nuvelet and Ryosley. And on the topic of Constellations, her C2 and C4 feel okayish to me, and what do I mean by okayish? It means that they aren't bang for your buck. Her Constellation breakpoints are C1 and C6 in my opinion, with C2 to C5 being filler. And finally, my biggest gripe with her is that she uses dual blades but doesn't have an attack called Starburst Stream.